Hi, and welcome to our presentation on the CARES Act, one of many presentations that we'll be doing over the next week as there's a lot of content to cover and it's changing frequently. I just wanted to point out that today is March 29th, 2020, and in a moment you'll understand why that's an important detail. My name is Chris Maxey. I'm the Operations Manager for Prefix Accounting. And we are a accounting and bookkeeping firm that specializes in the hospitality industry, specifically with restaurants, small groups and independent restaurants, and small boutique hotels and real estate development. I just wanted to point out that this is all very likely to change. There's a ton of content out there. There's a lot of people going through this bill. And this bill was written very hastily, so it is definitely subject to change. This is not legal or tax advice. I'm sure that in the next week or so they will be passing another bill that is going to be correcting probably some of the errors that are in the current bill, as well as the fact that there is not a lot of guidance out about these programs. And that's to come out during this week. Fingers crossed. As an overview, the CARES Act is also known as the Corona Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. It's a huge piece of legislation, covers a range of different things, but it's primarily focused on helping small businesses with the COVID epidemic. This thing also includes direct payouts to employees. It increases the amount of employee benefits that are available to those that are going on unemployment. It has tax ramifications. It has all sorts of different pieces to it. One of the most important ones is the forgivable loans up to $10 million with the objective of keeping people on payroll. Now, that is known as the Paycheck Protection Program. There's also emergency grants available, 10K express grants, and other loans that are up to $2 million for businesses that are in jeopardy, a series of tax incentives, and then there's paid leave and sick leave that is also available that is going to be coming into effect on April 1st that it should also be considered as part of your considerations when you're looking at all these programs. But today we're going to be covering the Paycheck Protection Program. This program is specifically designed to keep people off unemployment, keep them on the payrolls, and help businesses with cash flow issues that might not survive without this program. It is a 100% guarantee of 2.5 months of a company's average payroll. Now, that's a little bit of a weird way to look at what the cost is, since most businesses are looking at it on a weekly basis. So a lot of what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to look at your entire year, 12 months, and then divide it by 12. Multiply it by 2.5, and that'll give you an idea of what this loan, what the amount of this maximum amount of this loan can be. It will cover 8 weeks of payroll, rent, mortgage payments, interest specifically, and utilities. One of the huge benefits to this is that there is forgiveness with this. So you can get about 10 weeks worth of payroll as a loan in the value of a loan, and you can get 8 weeks of it forgiven. So there's a little bit that's going to be left over at the end of it if you choose to use the whole thing. The other cool aspect of this program is that there is an incentive to rehire. So if you have already laid off portions of your workforce or your entire workforce, which is very common in the restaurant industry right now. There's really no work. We're in the state of Massachusetts, and all restaurants have been forced to close. So many businesses just went ahead and laid people off. And this program is not going to penalize people if they did that. In the short term, that was definitely the smart decision to make, and they chose not to penalize people because of that smart decision at the time. So with that, if you have reduced the salaries of people by 25%, you're also going to, by more than 25%, you're going to want to restore their salaries to their original amount so that you don't get penalized. Another portion of this that is really interesting is the fact that there's streamlined applications. If you've ever done an SBA loan before, there's a lot of paperwork involved with it. You have resumes and business plans that you have to submit. A lot of supporting documentation has to be included with that. And if you used the disaster loan application site that was up 2 weeks ago, you're not going to have to use that shitty government site that was crashing all the time. I know I was trying to get one of those disaster loans submitted, and it took me 6 hours because I couldn't upload the PDFs that they were looking for. So all of that has been just shredded to bits, and really they're looking for a lot less information than what they were originally looking for. There isn't any sort of there isn't a lot of documentation in comparison. So when we're looking at this program, one of the questions is what expenses are covered under that. They say payroll, but what does that mean? Well, luckily with this, they're really looking at a wide range of payroll items. It includes salaries, wages, commissions. Very importantly, it includes cash, tips, and equivalents. So if you have tipped employees, you can pay them their average effective rate rather than just their tip rate, which is huge for servers. Right now, if they're on unemployment, they're really probably struggling. It also includes payments for vacation, parental, family, medical, and sick leave. That includes the new family and sick leave that came out with the previous bill. So you can pay that out with these funds here. You can also pay dismissal and separation pay. You can pay for healthcare and retirement benefits, and you can pay for state and local payroll taxes. One of the things that you want to pay attention to with that last one, state and local payroll taxes, is that some federal taxes are not included in that. And this is where we start getting into some of the murky areas, because you can utilize federal tax credits, but it's not clear as to whether or not you can use federal tax credits and this program together. There's also payments to independent contractors, and this item in particular is really a contentious point, and and accountants are really struggling with this one because the language is not very clear with this. They're in the bill and in the summaries of the bill, they're talking about how the independent contractors whose sole income comes from your payments. Now, by that very nature, independent contractors should not be receiving 100% of their income from you. An independent contractor should be doing business with multiple businesses, and that's one of the tests for an independent contractor. So this could end up being an area where the Department of Labor could come back and nail you for having a misclassified worker. The other portion of this is all of the language around this is really murky, and where they're going to define these independent contractors and sole proprietors, what does count and what doesn't count, is just way too gray for anybody to really want to consider this as part of their wages. So I would stay away from the payments to independent contractors until we get way more data on and guidance on what that means. This also brings up another point that I wanted to kind of cover, is that with this program, there is a lot of rules and stipulations that have not been expanded upon at this point. So one of the things you might want to consider is, if you're doing this loan, to open up a separate bank account and pay all of these covered expenses out of that bank account. That gives you a really good audit trail, so that if they are asking you questions about where all this money went, you can just pull a P&L that only hits this one cash account, and then you have a great list of all of the expenses that you have paid with that money. Especially when we're wondering here if there are certain expenses that aren't going to be covered that they're saying are currently covered. As they kind of divide out what these things are in very explicit detail, we may come to find out that some of these things aren't as clear as they currently look like they are. So businesses that are eligible, up to 500 employees. Now, if you are a restaurant group and you have quite a number of locations, it is 500 employees per location. So larger restaurant groups also have the ability to utilize this program if they're over 500 employees. This works for self-employed individuals, 501c3s, independent contractors, normal businesses, corporations, LLCs, S-corps, everything like that. There isn't a lot of detail on how this really works for self-employed and independent contractors, so we'll see what that ends up looking like. For all of the amount that's left over after the forgiven sum of money, so let's say we have $100,000, $80,000 of it is covered and forgiven. The $20,000 left over is subject to a 10-year term at prime plus 2.75% for a maximum of $10 million. This can technically be used for anything, but those expenses that are not covered expenses are not forgiven. Okay, so you can take this as a loan, but there's some strings attached to that, and whether or not you want to do that, or you want to do an EDIL loan or an express grant, that's to be determined at a later point. So, as I said before, this application process is streamlined. What do you need for it? Also to be determined. You can probably guess, based off of the other SBA loans, that you're probably going to need basic financial documents, P&L, balance sheet, AP and AR aging, statement of cash flows, the basics, a listing of your liabilities. You're definitely going to need your payroll journals, and you're probably going to need your payroll journals by week or by payroll run. Most likely tax returns. One of the things that, or two of the things that are really fantastic about this, is that you aren't going to need a personal financial statement, which, if you've ever had to put one of those together before, it's a pain in the ass and it goes on forever. It's always the hardest part of the entire application process. So that's not needed, at least at this point. We haven't seen that there's a requirement for it. And the absolute best thing about this is that there's no personal guarantee. So if you default, that dies with your business. That does not come in effect to you. So how does the forgiveness program work? So what I'll say right at the beginning of this is, make sure you have documentation. If any of these expenses that you have, make sure that you have the original documentation, have it organized well, have it tied out to some sort of spreadsheet, and are only spending it on the covered expenses. forgiven in total for expenditures made 8 weeks after the loan origination. So once you receive the funds and the loan is approved, you have 8 weeks to spend that money and before it gets turned into a loan. After those 8 weeks, you submit proof of expenditure and provide documentation to the lender. The lender, who might not be the SBA in this case, they're utilizing SBA approved financial institutions, so it could be your local bank, to determine whether the expenses that you have submitted are appropriate. Okay, so this gets a little bit murky, but for the most part, payroll expenses, very clear. Mortgage interest, very clear. Rent and utilities, absolutely clear. The SBA purchases the loan from the financial institution, then forgives the relevant amount of the initial loan. The remaining portion of the loan is guaranteed by the SBA and has a 10-year maturity rate at prime plus 2.5%. Now, what is prime? Prime is the federal mortgage rate that is determined by the Fed. You can go and Google that at any point in time, see what that number is. Again, I want to reiterate, the important thing here is that you document everything and that you have all of this in an organized fashion, because you have 60 days to work with a lender after that 8 weeks and get everything figured out. Who knows what happens if you go beyond that 60 days? So having all of those documents ready, having them set aside, having them put into a spreadsheet, having it ready for the moment after that 8 weeks hits, where you can just hand that over to the lender as soon as possible so that they can get those questions back to you. It's going to be incredibly important here. The other thing to consider here is think about all of the other businesses that are also looking at this program. There's going to be thousands of them, okay? All of these lenders, regardless of the fact that there are now more lenders, are going to be processing these loans. So just because you hand these documents over on day 55 does not mean that they are going to be able to process it on day 55. So get it to them soon, right after the 8 weeks, and make sure that you're asking questions and following up on this program. Okay, so we've determined that you actually want to participate in this program. You want to find a bank that has an SBA 7A program, which is the fancy term for the Paycheck Protection Program. We're working on providing a list as we find these banks, but right now, as of this weekend, there's only a few of them that are actively looking around and taking inquiries. The lending has not yet opened up. I believe there's a 7 business day delay after the bill has been signed for lending to open up. So we're still in the we're still kind of in purgatory here. But go ahead and ask your banker if they're going to participate in this program. If they say yes, ask them how much they do with the SBA on an annual basis. If there are a lot of banks out there that say that they're SBA lenders, but they might only do 1 or 2 loans a year. Those banks are probably not going to be well suited to this sort of volume through the SBA. So you're probably going to want to look for a bank that processes a lot of SBA loans, or one of these financial institutions that only deals with SBA loans. They're going to be very well suited for this, and they're going to be able to pump these applications through. With that being said, you're definitely going to start seeing applications opening up this week or next week. The larger institutions and the financial institutions that specialize in SBA loans are probably going to be opening up this week. We'll see. I just want to take a moment to get on my soapbox for a couple slides. The Independent Restaurant Coalition has been a lobbying interest for independent restaurants across the nation. They did a lot of work to make sure that there were specific portions of this bill that were geared towards small businesses that were in cash flow, not in ideal cash flow situations. They did a lot of work. They did a really wonderful work on making sure that you saw this on your Instagram feed. Their job is not done. There is going to be another bill passed soon. There is going to be more. There are going to be more portions of this bill that we're going to want corrected and that we're going to want added to this bill to further help the restaurant industry, because specifically the restaurant and hospitality industry has been affected the worst out of any other industry in the United States. And every week that these restaurants do not get help, it just increases the probability that they will not open up again. So go to saverestaurants.co, see what you can do to help the restaurant industry. There's not a lot that they're asking for. They're really looking to just get the word out. I implore you to go to the website and sign up for their newsletter. Additional resources. The James Beard Foundation has a specific blog that is related, a series of blog posts that are related to resources specifically for restaurants and employees of restaurants. There's the Welcome Conference that is putting out a lot of thought leadership on the COVID epidemic and how it's changing the restaurant industry. Again, the Independent Restaurant Coalition is huge in this day and age. And then finally, the Restaurant Workers Community Foundation, which is a 501c3 that has been formed to help restaurant workers survive through this, because a lot of them are on unemployment right now. A lot of them don't know when their next real paycheck is going to come in, and some of them aren't able to figure out how to get on unemployment. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's not much understanding of how the unemployment process works. So these resources are huge. I encourage you to subscribe to any newsletters that they have. Check their websites often, because they're definitely updating it on a daily basis. Finally, there's a lot more content that's coming. This bill is huge. We have a master ultimate guide to the CARES Act that a lot of folks are helping me build right now. And it's already, the summary version of this is already 15 pages long. It's going to probably be 20 pages long by the end of it. So there's a ton of content. We're trying our best to break it down into something that is digestible for people that are not lawyers or CPAs. And we're going to do our best to get that out on the street as soon as possible, and put it into content that is not just a huge document. So keep an eye out. We'll have a lot more information coming. We have a section on tax incentives that Paul Glantz and Jacob Schroeder are working on. There's the EDIL loans, which are more restrictive loans, but in certain circumstances might be the ideal loan for your business. We'll have a summary on that shortly. Paid and sick leave, this is April 1st, and this is going to have huge implications on your business if you're currently open, and if you're not, it's also going to have implications on you, even if you've already laid people off. So definitely pay attention to that one. Organization Inc. is going, an HR company that we work with, is going to be putting out some content on that that will be geared towards your employees. So, you may have had a conversation with me or somebody else at Prefix or somebody at Organization Inc. about the paid leave and sick time that's coming out. But that's a game of telephone, right? So we tell you how it works, and then you turn around and tell the employee how it works. And every time it goes through another person, something's probably been changed. So our goal here is to create some content that is a recorded explainer video format that dives into how unemployment works, this paid family leave works, this emergency sick time works, and how to apply for unemployment. You know, all of these questions that your employees have right now, we're going to try to put together into a concise video so that you can just hand them the link. They can watch it, they can understand, have a better chance of understanding what's going on, and then you're not explaining this to every single employee as they're asking about it. Finally, we're going to look at a comparison of programs, right? There's tax incentives, there's SBA loans, there's EDIL loans, there's this Paycheck Protection Program, there's the paid leave and sick time. There's all sorts of different scenarios that are going on here. And as I was talking with other accountants and bookkeepers this weekend, one thing was apparently clear is that everybody's mind is like swirling with how many different options there are, and what can be plugged in with something else, and how they work together. Can they work together? Do you have to keep them separate? You know, that sort of analysis can't really be done yet. We have to wait for more guidance from the Department of Labor and the IRS to be able to kind of figure out how this is all going to work. And so that piece of content is going to be coming probably at the end of the week. And that's the one that really, hopefully, will be able to tie this together and give you a game plan. But most importantly for right now, make sure you keep an eye out for the paid family leave and sick time video that's going to come out sometime early this week, because it is the 29th and the 1st is right around the corner. We will be in touch soon. If you're not a current client and you have questions about this video or about any of our content coming up, feel free to reach out to us at hello@prefix.accountants, and I'd be glad to talk with you. Have a good day. Remember to breathe. It's a difficult time.